showers and storms that will come alongside these low-end 90s. So keep that umbrella on standby, but also I know there's back to school still going on. A couple of areas starting around Wednesday and Thursday as well, or the first full week for a few folks. Make sure you're using that sunscreen, and when there are periods of rain chances, you'll definitely want to keep the umbrella around. We'll keep this kind of a rinse and repeat for each day here. And then as we get to the weekend, we finally start to see these 80s getting back into the forecast, even though it's only maybe a degree or two cooler. But looking ahead to next week, looks like beautiful sunshine expected from Monday through the following work week.
Well, this has definitely been one of the soggiest summers I can remember up here, but everyone keep a watch out for the rain and the heat this week. Y'all have a great rest of your night and have a great work week. We'll be back tomorrow and we'll see you then.
LawCall is provided in the public interest by Timberlake, League & Brooks, which pays an advertising fee to this station.
This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Robert Lane, sitting in for Sharon Doviet. This is the Tennessee Valley's only live legal call-in show. Did I mention it was live? Live call-in show. So we're going to do Ask Us Anything tonight. So you have questions about the rain, soggy roads, driving conditions. I mean, it doesn't matter because Michael Timberlake is here from Timberlake, League & Brooks.
We're going to do the legal thing here. We're going to answer legal questions. Did I mention
it was live? It's live.
It's live.
You call, he answers. That's how it works.
You have the benefit of 30 years of my legal experience, and I will tell you what I don't know, and more importantly, I tell you what I don't know.
On the show that's been on for 30 years.
Yeah.
But listen, while you're getting your phone calls and texts in on us, let me show you this. This is very nicely given to us by a viewer from Tyler from Madison. He was just cruising down Balch Road a little before 5 p.m. when another driver decides they don't want to wait their turn. Luckily, nothing happened this time, but Tyler says that previously he was hit head-on by someone while they were passing a mail truck. So, talk to us a little bit.
Geez, you know, I mean, dash cams are great. We really, and the video evidence that we're able to get from cars that have this technology is really fantastic, because you know it really is. You can explain how things happen. You can show pictures. You can show animations. But having a video of something is really just compelling. Wow. But you know, in this situation, clearly you know somebody's behind a mail truck. Got it, you know, can't pass on a double yellow line, a 2-lane road. You know, just because you want to go faster doesn't mean that you should, and doesn't mean that you're legally able to do that. You know, you're behind a post office truck, you know, you got to stop. You got to yield to that truck.
I mean, is it hitting a federal vehicle when you hit a mail truck?
I mean, you would be hitting a federal vehicle, and it really doesn't change kind of the legal analysis. Now, if a federal vehicle hits you and it's their fault, then it does change the legal analysis. What we deal with is a Federal Tort Claim Act case, as opposed to being able to sue a corporation or sue an individual. You get to sue the federal government, but there are very specific procedures you have to go through in order to file a claim against the federal government. Your attorney's fees are limited. The recovery is a little bit structured, a little bit different than it is in a normal case under Alabama law, but it is definitely different if you have to sue a federal employee.
Well, if you want to give us a call at 256-536-0077. You can also text your questions in to us. And if you get some video, send that to us too. We'd like to put it on the air.
We love it, absolutely.
I was reading something that surprised me. The Scottsboro Boys case is almost 100 years old.
That's just amazing that it's that old.
But it was handled pro bono by some lawyers. I mean, there were a lot of different cases at different levels, but primarily from this law firm in New York.
Right.
So explain to me, about pro bono cases and why do lawyers take them?
Well, I mean, pro bono basically is just a legal term for without pay. So it's to benefit the person or the person that you're representing, and the lawyer is going to do it without pay. There are a lot of reasons that we do that. Some of the time, our firm does a certain amount of pro bono work every year for just to help the legal community. We're involved in the Madison County Volunteer Lawyer Program that sets us up to do that and help people. And sometimes we do things for clients and just say, we don't need to be paid to try to help people out. But in general, pro bono work is done because lawyers want to help the greater good. They want to help individuals that couldn't, afford good representation, and in a particular case. Sometimes there's a benefit for the lawyer in terms of the profile of the case, but for the most part, they're working for free. That it's well intended.
And it keeps the government going. It keeps democracy.
Well, it does. It does seem to keep people on their toes.
Yeah, fascinating. Listen, we had a text about the slippery conditions that are out tonight. Does that go into how an accident settlement?
Yeah, anytime you're looking at a situation where you're trying to determine fault and a motor vehicle wreck or any kind of situation, you're going to look at the weather conditions that were present. If were the people acting reasonably for the conditions? In Alabama, simply because you're operating, under the speed limit, or you're operating, in accordance with the rules for a particular stretch of road, if it is not reasonably safe to do that, given the weather conditions, could be sunlight, could be rain, could be snow, could be something else. Though in that situation, you can't, just, get by on following the speed limit. You've got to do what's reasonable. So if you have to slow down lower than the speed limit, that's what you'll have to do.
Well, Gary is kind enough to give us a call. Let's find out what's on Gary's mind. Gary from Huntsville, talk to us.
Yeah, I got a question about an uncontested divorce.
All right. Go right ahead.
Everything I'm finding, we just decided it's the end of the road, but how come the paperwork, the only thing I can find to get the paperwork for us to fill it out ourselves is like $130-something, which is no big money, but I don't understand why just 5 or 6 sheets of paper has got to cost it much.
Well, it would, I don't know what's on those 5 or 6 sheets of paper to tell you what costs so much. But in general, even if you're going through an uncontested divorce, there's a lot of things that you want to make sure that you do right. And so, the best way to do that is to hire an attorney. An uncontested divorce is not going to be terribly expensive for both sides, especially if you split it. So what we tell people is, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of forms out there. There's a lot of things you can buy out there that act like a lawyer. But if it's not a lawyer, you're not going to have the benefit of that person, of the legal knowledge that you need to make sure it's done right in the jurisdiction that you're in. You're going to have to, not going to be able to have the benefit of that lawyer's expertise or their experience with the court system or their reputation with the court system to allow you to get what you want. So, I would say you're going to need to hire a lawyer. If you want to do it yourself, you're doing it, at your own peril. And unfortunately, lawyers make a whole hell of a lot of money when people try to do it themselves.
Well, Sharon does divorce work,
right.
And so she has said, even if you hire someone just to look it over,
sure,
that hour is well worth it.
Yeah, and that's just it. Again, like I said, the lawyers make a lot of money when people try to do it themselves and then they mess it up. So it's a lot more expensive to fix a mistake than it is to do it right the first time.
Well, if I got this right, it's Julia from Hartselle. Julian, talk to me. What's your question?
Yes, I have an old article back in 2013 from a local news channel. It was several news channels that had the article about me. However, I have sent documentation to show that all charges have been dropped and dismissed, along with a signed letter from my attorney with a case number.
All right.
Right. So basically, if you've been charged with a crime and in Alabama, then you can have it removed from your record. But it has to be either a case that it was dismissed or a case where you were found not guilty. So there's a very limited circumstances where you're going to be allowed to do that. If it's nonviolent crime, I believe you can have it expunged if the district attorney will give you permission, say, look, this is a nonviolent offense, it's not a felony offense, and then it can be removed. But for anything else, it's got to be something where they didn't prosecute it or you were found not guilty.
Michael, explain to me, is expungement mean like it's never happened?
Well, it's just removed from the public record. It doesn't mean that it's never happened. It never happens, and we deal with this a lot of times in cases where people are under oath. In a civil case, one of the common questions is, to someone, have you been arrested or convicted of a crime? And when you're telling a client whether they have to respond to that, if a case has been expunged, it gets a little dicey, because if it's not public record, there's not a way for them to find out about it, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen at some point.
Okay, we have a text question about whether you have to obey the laws of another state. Apparently, Florida will not let your dog hang its head outside the car. But in Alabama, we can.
We can.
So
if you're from Alabama and you go to Florida,
yes, what do you do?
You have to abide by the rules of of what is the laws in Florida.
So if you want to give your
your
dog
a free ride, you just need to stay in Alabama. And we see that, like motorcyclists, with helmet. Well, there's no helmet law where I live, and I'm like, well, you're in a different jurisdiction. You've got to follow the laws of that jurisdiction. And if there is a law on the books in some other states, we typically will give what we call full faith and credit to the laws of other states for people they're in Alabama.
Listen, I want to ask you, I've heard lawyers say, if you get hurt on the Mississippi-Alabama line, drag the body over to Mississippi. I want you to explain that to me. And we'll take more of your calls when we come back.
Pays an advertising fee to this station.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call, the Tennessee Valley's only live legal call-in show for 30 years and counting. Presented by the award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm Timberlake, League & Brooks, featuring the knowledge and experience of attorney Michael Timberlake, attorney Will League, attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Meservey, Attorney Bobby Marsh, and hosted by family law attorney Sharon Dovian. Your rights, your calls, live. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Sharon has the evening off, but Michael Timberlake is here to answer all your legal questions. Okay, so I had asked you, when I hear lawyers say, move the body to Mississippi, what do they mean by that?
You know, I mean, in a colloquial sense, it was, different laws. Different states can have different laws in terms of punishment and different crimes, different defenses. You've seen in the past few years that the stand your ground laws in different states have been really, really high profile. And so every state has a little bit different, explanation or a different standard that you have to meet in order to qualify for that. So depending upon what state you're in, a different, facts and circumstances can be prosecuted differently from the DA's position, and they can be defended, differently from a person that's an alleged, perpetrator. So it's one of those things. You want to, if you're going to commit a crime, do it in a state that's the most beneficial to you.
And I should rob a bank. Probably nowhere.
Probably it's probably a bad idea.
Now you have a Tennessee law license,
absolutely,
as a number of your compatriots over at Timberlake, League and Brooks do.
Yeah, I mean, we're so close to the line that we've had a ton of business that we've represented, in the past years. We had one partner that was licensed in Tennessee, and he got to the point where it was had too much work. So we spread that out over us, and everybody, all the lawyers but one, are licensed in Tennessee, and so we go across the border a pretty good bit.
Well, we have a question from Tennessee, from Franklin County. Bethel, I think, is his name. What's your question tonight?
Yeah, I'm asking about these people that refuse to take money.
You mean cash money?
They try to force me to use a credit card or buy a money order. Is that considered coercement? And if they refuse at a hospital, is that malpractice if they don't want to treat me because I don't have nothing but cash to pay them?
Yeah, that's a good question. It has gotten, it's very, a lot of businesses, especially in Huntsville, there's some that, they don't take, cash. They don't take, cash, for point of sale purchases. It's kind of making its way through the court system. I don't think it would be malpractice in the terms that if a hospital refused to treat you because you couldn't arrange for payment. But for the most part, hospitals are obligated to provide care to someone, even if they're an indigent. They can't provide the care. They have to provide enough care to stabilize that person, and then you can try to figure out a way to make accommodations for payment. So I don't think that's going to run into a problem with you trying to get care at a hospital because they won't take cash.
Well, it does say legal tender for all debts, right? Right there on the government document.
And some of this it's working its way through the courts in terms of whether businesses can do that. What we've seen is largely the businesses are getting the benefit of the doubt because there's so many other ways that are convenient for businesses and honestly safer for people to use than cash.
And I can understand that. I'm trying to figure out that a hospital would not take cash because they don't want to keep it.
I don't know if hospitals take cash at all anyway. I mean, I know they'll bill you. Typically, you don't, not going in there and having to pay cash. Sometimes it's credit card for copay up front. But like I said, they're not gonna, they're gonna provide care to you regardless of whether you can, make arrangements to pay at the spot or not.
Michael, speaking of hospitals, though, if I'm injured, the hospital gets paid back.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. Yeah, and there's some laws in Alabama that are specific to Alabama. Most every state has a similar law, but in Alabama, the hospitals do have a right to make a claim or a lien against any personal injury suit that you may have. So if you are injured, it's somebody else's fault, you go to a hospital, the hospital can assert a lien or put their foot in the door between you and any recovery you can have with the at-fault party. They file it in the probate court. They put the insurance company for the other person on notice that they have a lien up to the amount of their services. Now, a few years ago, Alabama did, alter this law to say, look, you cannot rely on a lien in a situation where somebody has health insurance. So as long as if you have, go in there with Blue Cross Blue Shield or some other type of insurance, the hospital has to file that claim first before they can assert a lien.
Talk to me a little about workers' comp.
Right.
Alabama's is different from the federal. So the people at the arsenal are federal?
Right. Right. It depends on if you're working for a contractor that's a civilian contractor working for the federal government. But if you're working for the federal government, there's a specific statute that governs their workers' compensation procedures, the amount of money that you can make, the amount of money that you get for being off work, the amount that you can get for any kind of disability and accommodations. Those are really, really specific types of laws. And we've had people call us over the years. We have relationships with firms that are outside of Alabama that do those because it is federal. Lawyers outside of Alabama can do those. We have a relationship with a group in Atlanta, a relationship with a group in D.C., and because those are so specific to federal government employees, you're not going to find a lot of lawyers that handle those on a regular basis here. So we work with other law firms to do that.
We're going to head on a little bit to the west. We're going to Killen. And Martha, what's on your mind tonight?
My grandson.
Uh-oh. Your grandson.
He was speeding on his.
Go ahead, Martha. I think we lost her.
Grandson cut her off. Oh gosh. So he was speeding, he was on his bike, and a police officer was trying to stop him, and he got knocked into a gutter and was injured as a result of that. The question there is really going to be, so he's doing something wrong, police officers is going to try to stop him from doing that. As long as the police officer doesn't use unreasonable force, as long as they follow the rules and regulations of the police in trying to do what they can do, the fact that they caused injury to somebody doesn't mean that the police officer is responsible for those injuries. As long as he or she followed the rules, regulations, and didn't act unreasonably.
I know you've represented a lot of children in your time who get injured. Are the rules different when a child's involved?
The rules are a little bit different because of who you have to work with. You have to, a child, a minor is not competent. They can't file a claim themselves. You have to have a representative that works through them. If a claim is settled for a minor, the court will settle the claim and enter a judgment against the at-fault party. It's not anything a parent can do on their own. There's a lawyer that's appointed to represent the interest of the minor. In addition to you or us as our firm, we represent the minor, but then there's another lawyer who's appointed by the court to make sure that the minor's fairly compensated, that the attorney's fees are reasonable, and that everything is taken care of the way it should be. So there's a lot of hurdles or hoops to jump through in cases for minors, but it's not onerous.
And so what would they do? Will they really say you haven't settled for enough?
Yeah, we've seen situations where the court and or the guardian ad litem will carefully analyze the attorney's fees that were charged, the amount of the settlement, the amount of the medical bills. What are they going to have? What's the child going to have to pay back to healthcare providers or to insurance companies? Those types of things. And if the court, in their judgment or the guardian ad litem's judgment, they don't feel that that's reasonable, then they can object to the settlement and say, hey, it's off the table. And in that situation, we just start the ball going against the insurance company.
Okay.
We see that sometimes where cases where people have tried to settle cases on behalf of a minor, try to get court approval, and the court says, no, this is not fair. You need to go hire a lawyer.
We're going to try and get in Chris from Huntsville. Chris, what's on your mind? You with us, Chris? Apparently we're having some phone problems.
Okay.
Chris, was that you? Well, I guess not. We're going to take a break. But you give us a call. We'll try and get you on the air.
Brooks, which pays an advertising fee to this station.
If we didn't get to your question tonight, you can reach Michael Timberlake at Timberlake League and Brooks here in Huntsville at 256-536-0770 or go to their website at law-injury.com.
Yeah, and Sharon is a normal host. She is a practicing family law attorney. She handles divorce, child custody, child support modification, those types of things. She is in Huntsville, but she practices all over North Alabama, 256-539-7337, and she can be found at SharonFamilyLaw.com.
And she will be back sitting in this seat next week.
Yeah.
And then on Mondays at 11:30, your law firm answers questions on the
yeah,
midday
there's a 10-minute segment or so on the midday show. We kind of do the same thing that we're doing here. You know, if you can ask the question, we'll figure out a way to answer it.
You'll try and answer it somehow.
Right,
Listen,
absolutely.
real quick, is AI affecting the legal business?
I think AI is affecting every business, and I think a lot of it's just how they're doing it. I mean, we're using AI as a tool to assist us in ways to accumulate data, really, to summarize data, and it's very helpful in that regard. Now, you don't use it to, you can't use it as a substitute for a lawyer. But it is a tool that a lawyer can use.
So I can't do my divorce decree?
I mean, like I said, it can do it, but is it going to be right or wrong? And that's really what you need a lawyer for, is to tell you whether the words make sense or not.
That's why you need a lawyer. So join us again Sunday night.